And welcome to the Libertarian Affiliate Spotlight on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party Affiliate Support Committee, Valerie Sarwak serving as chair, and of course the Libertarian National Committee, Whitney Bilyeu as chair. John Gapso, as he so often does, joins us on the big board. He's the one who gives you the fun graphs, the crazy, when we've got congressional candidates on, gerrymandering, fun facts, local newspapers, awards, candidates' websites, and just about everything you need to know to make this entertaining. Most importantly, so you don't have to listen to me drone on. Two spectacular guests tonight, folks who are involved in virtually every aspect of the libertarian movement. Christopher Thrasher joins us tonight. A special note, Christopher has spearheaded, if you will, ballot access for a number of years, working in conjunction with legends like Bill Redpath. Christopher holds a special distinction. He is the individual who, working with a great team, but the individual who's managed to get the Libertarian Party on the ballot during presidential years in all 50 states consecutively. No one has done that since the days of H. Ross Perot. Given the goalpost moving, duopoly disgusting, Lucy moving, taking the football challenges that he often faces, it's an astonishing act of political work, courage, bravery, sweat, tears. And I just wanted to make a mention that I've had the opportunity in both presidential elections to try to do ballot access. And as someone who has failed miserably at getting petitions, never mind the logistics, the knowledge of each individual state laws, working with local and state level affiliates from around the country, from every different perspective, never mind all of that, I find it astonishing. And I, Christopher's a friend of mine, but at the same time, I think it's important that we recognize how important it has been to the party, which makes tonight's conversation all the more poignant because, quite frankly, we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. And I want to say from a positive perspective, I agree with the Reason Magazine article that's was made so much noise of. We have established a libertarian base. We understand that an articulate, hardworking candidate like Joe Jorgensen came from a libertarian field, well known to all of us and somewhat through the country, but with none of the national name appeal of, say, a former governor, ran a purely libertarian campaign that literally hit the ground in all 50 states, but left us with the challenge of facing, in some states, through a combination of the moving goalposts and a slight slip from the last 2016 effort in voting totals, with some real challenges. Joining him is someone who is no stranger to LPTV. Jen Moore is the chair of the Libertarian Party of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and served as regional vice chair for a number of years before taking the big seat and replacing Steve Sheets this time around. Steve, of course, is running for the United States Senate and again was one of the moving forces, one of the real leaders of something called the Molten Maneuver, which we've discussed on the show. But tonight we're going to just talk about, we're going to bring those issues together into one heady, steamy mix, if you will. The importance of the Molten Maneuver and how it impacts voting overall and how it impacts ballot access, and also the status on both. So both of you, thank you for joining us. We're in 3 different locations, and through the miracle of IP addresses, we're going to have a conversation tonight. Christopher, thank you for joining us for the first time. For folks who don't know, Christopher is in law school, as well as juggling a number of issues for the LP. And I know you've just kicked off the semester. So again, thanks for taking the time to do this.
Christopher, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Well, let's go first. Talk about, if you will, what is the status, if you will, of ballot access for the Libertarian Party nationally?
So, well, first off, I just want to say, a couple things as far as what we've been able to accomplish both in 2016 and 2020. I appreciate the praise, Pat, but I cannot take credit alone. I mean, it is impossible to truly quantify the effort that it takes from, individual volunteer petitioners, state chairs, state party officials, candidates, down ballot candidates as well, and professional petitioners. I mean, it is a monumental effort, and it's not just petitioning. I mean, once you get the signatures, there's all sorts of verification processes that have to happen. There's all sorts of I's to dot and T's to cross. And I mean, in some cases, you have to physically assemble massive books of petitions. I mean, every single state, all 50 states, every single state has completely different ballot access laws. And so you add that complication to the already complicated task of actually getting the signatures, and it is a monumental effort in terms of hours, in terms of dollars, and it's not something any single person could ever accomplish. And I would not be able to point to the successes that the party has had without all the contributions that people have made across the country. So just want to start off by saying that I appreciate the praise, but the credit has to go to the individuals, the literally thousands of people across the country that have made sure that the Libertarian Party is represented on every American's ballot for two presidential races in a row. I mean, it's just it's that monumental effort by each person on the ground that made it so that we could vote for Gary Johnson back when and Joe Jorgensen this time around. Now, as far as the current state of ballot access,
let me jump in for a second, because I want to use, I think, the ultimate example in the past election, and that was Maine. How close did we come in Maine?
So I believe it was by 8 signatures that we were able to get on the ballot. And last year, it was certainly, a bit of an emergency, but it's also worth noting the reason we had to petition in Maine is because the Maine Libertarian Party had successfully run a voter registration drive, and we had thousands of Libertarians registered. And because of the way that their ballot access law was read, the Secretary of State basically ruled that, well, because a certain number threshold of voter registrations had not been, a second threshold, I should say, had not been achieved, it was decided that all of the registered Libertarians at that time would be thrown, they would be unregistered. So they were thrown to be independents instead of members of the Libertarian Party. So basically, the Secretary of State in Maine reset the clock to zero from thousands of registrations to now zero. So that's why we had to petition to get on the ballot. And there is some ongoing litigation about that, about the absurdity of that law. And that's just one of the lawsuits that's pending across the country right now. But because of that decision by the Secretary of State, the Maine party had to petition to get on the ballot. Now, when we got to towards the end of the petition drive, really the end of July and beginning of August, it was close. It was very close, and I was able to come in. I actually missed. It's the first convention that I wasn't there in person. Libertarian convention that I was not able to attend in person in years, because I was actually on the road to Maine. So I was tuning in by Zoom while I was driving to Maine to help out with the petition drive there. And I got to tell you, it was an all hands on deck effort. We had national staffers come up. Tara DeSisto made some of the deliveries there at the last minute to make sure we were over the line. We had, just a full court press by the Maine Libertarian Party and Chairman Jim Baines there. And all of, it literally was, everybody came out to make sure that we hit the number. We did have, some professional petitioners involved as well, but it was definitely a colossal effort. And some of the, going back to every state having different laws, some of the, it seems like northeastern or New England states in particular have a couple of them have this interesting provision where instead of turning the signatures into the Secretary of State's office on a statewide level, you actually have to turn in the petitions to each town clerk. So there's more than 700 towns in Maine. So as you can imagine, trying to actually deliver all of the signatures. And yeah, you also have to go pick them up too. But it was, getting down to into that crunch time deadline. It got pretty crazy. And just to show you the absurdity and the archaic nature of so many of these ballot access laws, the town clerks, how they actually verified the signature, they just logged into the Secretary of State's website to verify that that whoever had signed it was a voter. So, there's literally no reason whatsoever to do this turn in except to make it, just a ridiculous and onerous process. And that's that kind of, you're right in that drive definitely showcases both the madness of the ballot access laws, the absurdity of some of them, and the colossal effort that is involved. And also, it shows just how dedicated our party members and activists are, that we were able to get it done. And we got Joe Jorgensen on the ballot. I believe it was by a total of 8 signatures, which is a little closer than I would have liked it. But in the end, we were on the ballot. So,
final thought on that. How many folks, and we'll make an example of one of them in particular, self-absorbed, think they know everything, think they can do everything, types like me, got between, say, after, literally 2 days of work in again, the last week, temperatures were in the mid to high 90s in Maine. Understand that this was, and I want to deliver this message because I think it's uplifting. Terrible conditions, dealing with tourists all over the Maine. So you never even knew who was really going to be a voter. I actually collected a couple of Rhode Island signatures in Maine. All right. And in a situation with clearly the most polarized election in recent American history, where it was routine, I got people screaming at me. Now, I'm kind of used to that. I don't take it personally, but the sheer level of invective was startling even for me. How many people got, say, between 10 and 12 signatures, despite the fact that they might have spent a couple of days?
That's not an uncommon tale. That's not an uncommon tale in a normal year without a pandemic, without people being just a little bit more skittish than they would be normally in any state. Petitioning is hard work. It is not just time consuming, but you get yelled and screamed at sometimes. You get people that are misinformed, and I've been accused of from petitioning. I've been accused of all sorts of things. Somebody said I was a LaRouche member or something one time. That one kind of cracked me up a little bit. It is not easy work. It is not easy work, and it's not easy to overcome just the general idea of having to go up to a stranger and say, hey, sign this piece of paper so somebody can get on the ballot. Sometimes you have to explain, wait a minute, you're not on the ballot? Like, how does that work? Well, yeah, it's because we've got all these ridiculous laws that were basically created to keep a certain party off the ballot back in the 30s, and now have turned into this way that the Republicans and Democrats are simply able to eliminate competition. And it's hard work, and there's no shortage of individuals who have done it for an hour and say, oh my God, I can't possibly do this on a daily basis. But you know what? Even if it's just 1 or 2 signatures, we even in Maine, we had people who would print out a petition at home. And of course, well, I shouldn't say at home, they probably had to go to a print shop or Staples or something, because even the petition is not a normal piece of paper. It has to be a legal size. Some states, it's just like absurd sizes. For the longest time, Massachusetts was, and I think it's still, I'm not sure if it still is, or that might have actually gotten changed, but it was based on the size of a piece of paper back in colonial times. So, you have to lug around these giant.
Oh, no, I
mean,
remember going to the Staples at in South Portland, Maine, on a Saturday afternoon, and it took like 3 tries for the night. And the people at Staples were very nice, but it took 3 tries to get it done. But here's my takeaway: and this is why for the libertarian movement, everybody's effort counts. Everybody's.
Yep. Absolutely.
If one of the people, and I just remember Jackie Perry schlepping stuff around. I remember her doing massive texting both in Rhode Island and Maine to get people out to do the work. So many people. Jim Baines has got a great crew up in Maine. I got to meet them later in the summer during the Joe bus tour up there. If one person had said, you know what, this, let's just say it was 2:00 that Saturday afternoon. If one person said, you know what, I'm all set with this, I'm going to go have a beer, we wouldn't have been on the ballot in Maine.
Nope.
We wouldn't have been on all 50 states in the United States. And we would have lost a invaluable point of marketing, philosophy, reach. It would have changed the entire picture, and all it would have taken was one person to slack off. Now, obviously, if the other side is, if we gotten a half a dozen more people, it wouldn't have been 8. But you know what? We did it, and that's what counts. And it was a royal we. All of us did it, regardless of whether you happen to be near Maine and you showed up in the week or 2 beforehand, regardless if you were in any one of the other states and you participated at some level. We did it. And it's important during challenging times like this. And of course, I'm talking about some of the internal political situations that are going on. It's critically important at times like this that we take away some of the wins that we're going to discuss tonight and say, and spike the football. Yeah, we have immense challenges as a party. We have immense issues being thrown in our face. Our nation's government is hopelessly out of control. And I saw that today at a rally in Providence, Rhode Island, that I covered for my day job. And it just, despite all that, let's celebrate the greatness. Now, of course, we're here to figure out a way to pump it up. So where do we stand nationally right now? What states do we have some challenges in that we need to face as a community, as a family, as a movement, as a philosophy?
As far as the number of states, I apologize that I don't have the direct number in front of me, but I believe we're still on the ballot I believe it's 35 states where we have secured ballot access for the next election. That does not mean that we're going to be, that might sound low compared to 50, but many of these states, they are situations where you can't necessarily petition until the year of the election. So we're gonna have some challenges for sure, but we're certainly not too bad off as far as what the baseline to start out with is. It is going to be interesting to see how some states that might have made some changes to their laws, or at least even some court rulings that were favorable to us regarding the COVID restrictions and unfortunately the case law surrounding ballot access litigation is all over the place. You had some states where because of the situation and the difficulties in petitioning, that signature requirements were reduced, and then you have a state like Chairman Moore's state in Pennsylvania, where even though it was actually, I believe it was illegal, completely illegal to petition, but actually, forgive me, that might have been New Hampshire. Either way, there was one particular state where the governor basically made it illegal to be on the street, and yet the judge said, no, you can still petition. So, that kind of thing happens, and it'd be interesting to see how some of the residual effects from those rulings plays out next year. Now, as far as states where there are some issues, we've got a couple of states that have passed, that have made the ballot access laws even worse. We've got, the situation in New York where it's already complex because you have parties like the Working Families Party and the Conservative Party, which are basically just proxies for the Democrats and the Republicans, respectively. There's a thing called fusion where those parties will typically nominate the same candidates as the Republicans and Democrats. And the new law that was passed basically makes it extremely difficult to not only petition to get on the ballot as far as the number of signatures required, but also makes it much more difficult to achieve what, for example, what Larry Sharp, by getting a number of votes in 2018, that secured us ballot access for the next 2 years in the state of New York. That same vote total would not have even come close to securing with this new law that has been passed. Iowa is another state where there's been a new law passed that just makes adds more burdens as far as county distribution, where signatures have to be a number of signatures in each county, and adds to the overall number as well. So there are, like I said, there are a few states where our job has been made even harder. It is going to be key, no matter what. If you haven't already, please consider making a donation to the LNC's Ballot Access Fund, because in the end, it costs money to actually get these signatures. We have a robust and a very, very good volunteer response always with these petition drives. But the fact of the matter is that it costs money to fill in those gaps with professional petitioners, and it is going to be a significant outlay from the national party and from the individual state parties as well, in order to ensure that we have successful petition drives. This year, we've actually already had a successful petition drive in Arkansas. So the Libertarian Party of Arkansas, Michael Packow and his crew have done a wonderful job making sure that the Libertarian Party is going to be on the ballot in Arkansas. There is ongoing drives in North Dakota. The chairman of the North Dakota Party has been spearheading the drive there. And also there's an ongoing petition drive in Alabama, trying something very unique in that, Alabama is one of those states where the signature threshold for a candidate that is an independent candidate is a lower number than, by far a lower number than getting on the ballot as a political party. And the Libertarian Party of Alabama has undertaken the effort to get the Libertarian Party as a valid, not a valid, but as a registered, major party in the state. So definitely some pretty aggressive undertakings that we're up to right now. But also the planning is already there for 2022 and 2024, and there will be, again, significant outlays in order to get across those finish lines in the states where we still will need to petition to get on the ballot. So,
Jen Moore, and we got a little bit of an echo there. Bear with us. Jen Moore is the chair, of course, of the Libertarian Party of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, not just a state, but a Commonwealth, and of course, a state of mind. This is where you're supposed to say, "Oh, geez." Come on, give us one oh, geez.
All right, oh, geez.
We torment Jen about her Midwestern charm. Because
I've been in Pennsylvania for 11 years now, but I don't think the accent's going away.
Well, listen, compared to the two guys you're stuck with tonight on the air, it's charming, believe me. We've had you on a couple times to discuss in depth the Molten Maneuver, and of course, to refresh folks, you've got. Well, why don't you describe it? You give much better testimony to it.
Absolutely. Again, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, and it's really nice this time to be talking about results. So, the Molten Maneuver, basically our election laws in Pennsylvania allow for a quirk where we have about a 5 or 6 week window where we can put people on, we can look for positions that are uncontested, and we can put people on the ballot where nobody else is running. So it happens very, very quickly. This year we sent just shy of about 16,000 letters to registered libertarians around the Commonwealth, and we asked them to run for office. We got, about 500 responses, and 113 of them made the ballot and are likely winners this November. So to put that in perspective, we have around 230 elected libertarians in the whole nation. Pennsylvania is expected to win at least 113 more elections this fall, and that's before we even go into our write-in drive, which will be ramping up in the near future. If 2019 is any indicator, we'll probably win another 50 to 80 on write-in. We plan on doing some more mailings and things like that to ask people to just, have 3 to 5 people write them in places where there's nobody on the ballot. So Pennsylvania currently has 139 candidates. 26 of them are contested, and some of those races are very winnable too, but 113 likely winners on the ballot. So we're really excited, and I think we're going to have a great November.
Now that's amazing. Now, give us kind of a timeline of this has been done a couple of times now. What was your first year's totals, and where do you think our high point potentially could be?
Well, in 2017, I was the only person who took advantage of it, and I was elected to office. And that's where I told Dr. Molten that I was going to make sure that I helped him in 2019. In 2019, we elected 27 people. 25 of them, we made the ballot, and 22 of them were on write-in. So, 47 elections was great, but, at that point, we only sent about 5,000 letters. We sent 3 times that many this time. The biggest problem is the fact that, we can start looking, we have to wait for the write-in results to be tabulated. So we have, to wait till maybe early to mid-June. And then we have to identify the opportunities county by county, going through them. It's painstaking because none of the data is uniform. It's not like you can just write a program and scrape this. I mean, every county presents it differently, and some of them don't give you the data at all. They make you go and, search through their book to see who won the election. They're on the ground in the county. So after you've done all of that, then you have to, send out these letters. And our executive director, Kevin Goggin, was just a huge help to us with this because he was able to get bulk mailings out and save us a heck of a lot of money rather than sending, first class postage. So, by the time we actually started getting calls and emails from these candidates, it was 4th of July weekend. And then it was just, dozens of calls a day. It was me, Chuck Molten, and Wes Benedict who were, fielding these calls. And, that persisted for a few weeks. And by the time we got a good list together of, okay, these are people we've talked to, we think they would be good to run for office, they're interested, they understand what ballot access is going to entail, then we would pass the list off to the counties where they would get further support and help them get on the ballot. So this was just a huge team effort of everyone in the state. The counties that picked up the ball and ran with it, and really contacted these people and walked them through it and helped them petition are the ones who got the most people on the ballot. York County in particular did an amazing job. They got more candidates on the ballot than any other county in the state. Allegheny County was the runner-up. But we sent letters to 65 out of the 67 counties. So it was a huge effort. And, we wouldn't have been able to do it without all those people on the ground helping get these people, the paperwork they needed. And just like Chris was saying earlier, I mean, everything has to be printed on legal size and you send it and they print it on standard size instead. I mean, a lot of these laws are archaic. The paperwork is not self-explanatory. So, you can send people a huge list of instructions, but really having those county leaders, pick it up and really walk through all the fields on the papers makes a huge difference. So the one thing, Pat, that I can't say enough is that everybody came together to make this project successful. People put the caucus wars aside. People who normally don't like each other work together on this. Everybody wanted to see this project succeed. 99% of us were just focused on getting candidates on the ballot and winning. I really just appreciate the fact that everybody put their differences aside to make this happen. And we have people from all across the libertarian spectrum who are going to win office this year.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. Now, the question obviously is 2 great success stories. Where, if you will, is the connectivity between the two? So let's talk about the Molten Maneuver as a tool to promote ballot access and how, if deployed around the nation, because I think ultimately there is an opportunity in virtually every state, some more than others, but there are appointed, elected, uncontested positions in virtually every state, every Commonwealth, and of course, even Rhode Island and the Providence Plantations, as we used to call it. And why? Let me just weigh in on this. This show and the Candidates Corner show that happens on Friday, we celebrate the down ballot candidate. We obsess over it. And quite frankly, the further down the ballot, the better. Because it is the opinion of this host, what do the kids say? IMHO? In my humble opinion, the impact that local candidacies, hyper-local candidacies, whether it be school board, water board, what's my favorite example every week? In Colorado, there are positions open for election for mass transportation boards. Every position imaginable at every state and county and local level. But it's those down ballot candidates, the ones that seem obscure, that very often have the most impact on their community initially. And if we're trying to build the bench, as we say, which, by the way, I will contend for you, already exists, but ultimately, if we are trying to engage with communities in acts of stewardship, because remember, folks, we don't use the word govern here, we use stewardship. But if we are trying to steward our communities, work alongside of folks in our communities to self-govern, what better way to do it than through these hyper-local offices? One of the mantras of this show, folks, is that very often the people running for this office, and we're going to talk in a second about the town auditor in Pennsylvania, very often it is the first libertarian they've met, never mind the first libertarian in their mind they're about to be governed by. In our mind, what we're going to teach them about stewardship. The very first. And the convenient argument that's used by the left, that's used by the duopoly, quite frankly, right and left, is that, well, libertarians have never governed before. It's just theory. What do they know about the mechanics of a town or a community? They can't possibly. They're adults. They're self-absorbed. Sorry. We're finding already around the country, and, who do we always talk about? Our friend Kara in Burnsville, Minnesota, but around the country in West Virginia and California and Minnesota and Pennsylvania and New York, we're finding everywhere that once libertarians are unleashed upon their community, there are sudden and outrageous outbreaks of, this requires no mask, outbreaks of liberty everywhere, where people all of a sudden get to self-govern. Oops, we use that word again. They get to self-steward. They get to organize their own communities. They have input. There's transparency. Love that word. Jen, talk to us about the job of town auditor, because a lot of folks, that's something that's somewhat unique to Pennsylvania. What does a town auditor do?
Well, I'm actually an elected auditor, Pat. That was what I was elected to, a 6-year term. I'm the chair of our board. And I was the first libertarian that anybody in my community met. Now, I am very, very happy to let everyone know that we have a libertarian constable on the ballot who's probably going to win here in Upper Providence. So there's going to be 2 of us now. So hopefully between the 2 of us, we'll be a force to be reckoned with. There's also another auditor position that's uncontested that we didn't get anyone on the ballot for. But if we can find somebody to write in for that, we could have a libertarian quorum, which is a big deal because it's a board of 3 auditors. Now, that being said, the job of auditor, there's 2 different situations you can run into. In some places, they hire a CPA, like in my township. And, this auditing firm will audit the books, and then they'll send it to me. And I, of course, got it during ballot access this year, so I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet. But I'll go back and ask questions of the CPA if I see something that, raises any questions. We do, set the pay for supervisors if they want to do any work outside of their normal role, like if they want to do snow removal or something like that, the auditors would be called in to set their pay. But most of all, you're just a fiscal watchdog where you have an opportunity to be on the inside, to look at the books and to make sure that nothing untoward is going on. Things in my township are pretty good. They spend too much money, but that's not my decision. I haven't found anything nefarious. Other auditors have, though. The other situation is that you may actually do the audit of the books yourself. That happens more often in rural townships, where the group of auditors gets together, usually sometime in the spring, and they do an audit of the books. It takes about 10 to 20 hours, and they actually go through everything with a fine-tooth comb themselves. It's an important role. It's a great way to get to know the finances of your township in and out. We're probably going to elect, I don't know, 50 or 60 auditors this year. That's one of the big ones for us. We're going to elect a bunch of constables too. The constables basically keep the peace at the polls, but they also can do some court work, like serving warrants and things like that as well. But we do have uncontested mayors, supervisors, council, school board, judge and inspector of election. We're going to win all of those positions this year.
Now, does anybody know personally a town that might need someone to look at the books? Anyone?
That's one of the main reasons that libertarians cite for running, especially people who are already active in their communities. They take a look at it and they say, there's so much corruption and there's so many questions. I just want to be on the inside so I can have access to this information. I mean, it's when we have new people come to us, one of the main things that they say is, I don't like the way this town's being run. I think there's something going on, and I want to take a better look at it. So, when we always ask them, why do you want them to run for office?
Right. And it's Dan Fishman, when he ran to be the auditor, if you will, of Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, ran a great series of campaign commercials where he talked about how can one of the two teams be the referee?
Yeah.
Right?
It's true. That's what I always tell people about both auditor and judge and inspector of elections as well. There's nobody better to do this job than somebody who is independent of the people making the decisions, who can really truly take an independent look.
Right.
But Pat, going back to ballot access, I have 139 people who are candidates on the ballot who have now been trained in ballot access. In addition to that, I held forums, and all of our county leaders have been trained in ballot access. When the next even year election comes around and we're putting governor on the ballot in 2022 and we're putting president on the ballot in 2024, we have all of these people who understand how to collect good signatures. It's really a big deal to be able to, have this many people all across the Commonwealth trained, and be able to, do the things that only people like, me and Chris have been able to do in the past, and to train people in. We're passing on that skill set. I also serve on the National Ballot Access Committee, and I have a lot to learn. I was appointed right after I ran the Pennsylvania drive for Joe Jorgensen, so I came on very late in the last term and was reappointed this term. So I've only been to a couple meetings with those guys, but I'm hoping that as I learn more about ballot access in other states, I'll be able to make some recommendations on the places where things like this could be effective, like what we're doing in Pennsylvania.
How important is it to have candidates on the ballot when you're in a state that relies on one of the statewide elections, whether it be gubernatorial, presidential, whatever, to have candidates across the state on the ballot to help that, if you will, ballot access driven candidate? Jen, why don't you touch on that? And Christopher, you as well.
I tell you what, when I ran for Auditor General in 2020, and everywhere that we had a down ballot candidate, I got between 1 and 3 percentage points higher vote totals. It is a huge deal, especially if you have a place where libertarians have run the last couple of years and it's normal to see them on the ballot. If you're running a ballot access or a race for party status, having candidates all across your state is a huge deal, because it's going to up those vote totals for everybody. That was my experience, at least. I'm really a data and analytics person, so I really, kind of dove into it after my race to see what areas I had the most support in, and it was almost unanimously places where we had down ballot candidates, where people were running for state rep or something like that.
Christopher, what's your reaction to that?
So she's absolutely correct. Jen, what you have seen as far as the data, that is backed up time and time again across the country. When there are down ballot candidates that have the Libertarian or the L next to their name, there's no question it helps the candidates up at the top of the ballot as well. It is crucial, especially on state level election, that in state level elections, that if you have a full slate it just makes a huge difference as far as vote total. So, as a matter of fact, I just happened to speak with LP ballot access extraordinaire Bill Redpath earlier tonight, and we were talking about the situation in Illinois. So, if you're in Illinois and would consider running for office, they're working hard right now to get a full slate for their state offices next year. And again, when you have the ballot full of libertarians from top to bottom, it drives everybody's numbers up. There's just, like I said, the data is there time and time again to show that. One thing that I was thinking earlier when, Jen, you were talking about all the successes with the Molten Maneuver here in Pennsylvania, not only does it train individuals in the actual logistics of ballot access, talking about the paperwork and talking about, making sure all the formats are correct and, the right size of paper and all that. What you're doing by having people involved in local government, forgive me, Pat, for using the dirty word,
the G word.
what that is, there's no way that you can just state how important it is to build our bench. Because I guarantee you that within the elected officials that Pennsylvania has elected, for water boards or town auditor, within there's a future state representative from the Libertarian Party. There's a future candidate for governor. There's so many ways that we can actually grow the individuals that start in these positions. And also, I would also encourage, not every state has the same amount of uncontested races and elected offices that Pennsylvania does. Well, even still, look towards your individual towns and counties. Oftentimes, you can find yourself a position in which you are an appointed libertarian. You can get appointed to boards or committees that are actually doing work in the town. I mean, I just moved to a town in Massachusetts, and I am attempting to get appointed to the zoning board of all things. Can you imagine one libertarian on the zoning board, saying, "Yeah, okay, well, you know what, you should be able to do what you want to do with your property." Perhaps within reason anyway. I'm not going to come. I don't want to come in and maybe vote for a landfill in the middle of a suburb. But at the same time, these opportunities with these local races, they give you the ability to not only put libertarian principles put them into action in your local communities, but as we've talked about, you're able to share these principles with others who may have never been exposed to the way of thinking. And what inevitably happens, as we've talked about with Kara Schultz, and it's happened over and over again. We've got a couple other town council or many other town and city council members who inevitably have convinced somebody else on the boards to become libertarians because they see not only the corruption that's inherent in the other two parties, but they see how libertarian ideals and libertarian action can positively affect your community, and that you can't discount the fact that if you start small and you're building that bench and you're putting it into action at a local on the local level, that gives you the opportunities and gives you the know-how to ascend up and we can start electing. Right now we've got a couple state legislators across the country, and I think it's not unreasonable to think that we can continue to build on that. And again, these people, I think that in Pennsylvania, you've got people in local positions right now that are going to be fantastic candidates for higher office, down the road, 2, 3, 4 election cycles down the road. I mean, it's a huge benefit to start building that bench. And it's something that, the Libertarian Party really should take pride in, that we're we're focusing on the local level right now, not only affecting real change in your community, but preparing for the future.
Yeah, that's what I say all the time. That we're building the farm team. This is how we get the experience and the connections for bigger elections. Some of these constables are going to go on to win sheriff, and some of these mayors are going to go on to win state rep. It's interesting that you should bring up the zoning board, because in Pennsylvania that one is always appointed, but the last couple auditors in my township, after they stepped down from auditor, were appointed to the zoning board. So now they're making decisions about people's property rights, and that's the other thing that I tell people is that just getting in there and getting to know them, you have a good chance of an appointment in a position where you'll actually be making decisions that really affect your community. I wouldn't be opposed to going into a position like that myself when, I'm done with auditor in a couple of years, or, I don't know, maybe I'll run for re-election. We'll see how it goes.
I remain convinced, and I know I say this every week, and I know I'm a homer and a cheerleader, but I remain convinced that the people that we're talking to right now who are running, in winning in town council races, in some of these down ballot races, I believe 10 to 15 years from now will be running for either federal or national offices and winning because of the track record they're able to bring. Listen, we all know that votes have consequences. Decisions made in office have consequences. And once you have that track record, regardless of the level, that you can actually bring to bear in a debate, a palm card, a radio ad, a television ad, a chat room, a talk radio show, that's undeniable. The impact of competent service in an era of an incompetent government, it cannot be underestimated, can it?
Absolutely not. I think that a lot of times we forget the real impact that we can have as libertarians. And again, perhaps in positions that people haven't thought about or positions that might be forgotten. I mean, I look at somebody like Indiana Libertarian Mark Rutherford, who has run a few times, run as the Secretary of State candidate in Indiana, and Indiana is actually one of the states where the ballot access is actually tied to the Secretary of State's race. So Mark Rutherford's percentage last time around ensured that the Libertarian Party was on the ballot. And of course, we saw the success with Donald Rainwater, where there were many, many counties in Indiana where the Libertarian candidate was not only competitive, but actually ended up as a close second to the incumbent governor there. So, I mean, and again, that wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the down ballot candidate securing the ballot access. But the reason I bring up Mr. Rutherford is he has been appointed as the chairman of the Indiana Public Defender Commission for, I want to say, probably 5 or 6 years now. He's been on that that commission, and I've spoken to him several times about how he is able to put forth libertarian policy from that appointed position, and sometimes it takes a little while for the rest of the commission to realize they've just moved in a libertarian direction, just because of subtle movements and subtle policy that Mark Rutherford has been able to inject into that one role in a often forgotten commission, just from being an appointed libertarian. And it's things like that where sometimes you don't realize the impact that you can have, not just at this very moment in your local community, but on the future. And this is something that we have to recognize. So if you're in a state where there happens to be some unopposed races, just like in Pennsylvania, run. Why not? See what you can do on your local level. And if you're not in one of those states, then look at your local organizations, look at or your local municipalities, your counties, and see if there's any vacancies on a committee or a board, and see if you can perhaps get an appointment, because you never know how much you might be able to inject some libertarian thinking into policy that not only affects it affects your own life, but also affects individuals in your community.
If I can put this out to both of you, what's the missing ingredient? Is it more funding? What do we need to do to take this effort and take it to the streets, if you will, to do a show, to take it national?
I would say that we just need more committed, dedicated volunteers. It's always the boots on the ground. I mean, funding is important. But we've managed to cover that. We do a lot of good with the little bit of resources we have in that respect, at least in my state. It's always good to have more. But in reality, we just need people who are, ballot access dorks like us, to the point that they want to learn the ins and outs of this. And, candidates who are willing to step up. I mean, you can run a messaging campaign for 2 or 3 months, but I guarantee you that actually serving in public office for 4 to 6 years is a lot more work. We need people who want to do the work of this hard work of governing and compromising and, representing libertarians out there in public office, representing us as candidates. And, going back to a little bit of what we were saying about the Molten Maneuver in other states, it's very rare for a state to have a window where you can put people on the ballot. Very often, everything has to be turned in for the major parties and the minor parties at the same time. But there are a lot of opportunities for write-ins where there's nobody on your ballot. I know that not every state has write-ins, but the ones that do, my mom in Michigan, they just had a township trustee position that nobody was on the ballot. If there would have been a libertarian in her community, and you could have found that person, now it's a little bit harder there because they don't have partisan registration, and we make a lot of use of those lists in Pennsylvania. But if you had a libertarian, they could have run a write-in and they would have probably won with 5 votes.
Wow. It says a lot. It says a lot. It's you're right. It's the right chemistry of people, having the people who want to run, but at the same time, having the folks who, quite frankly, have that attention to detail, that near obsession with statistics and data and analysis and the local law. I mean,
the threshold for bureaucracy.
the threshold for pain. But listen, that's what makes this party great. We have a lot of folks who are obsessive in detail, aren't they? Is that a polite way to say it? Yes, they are.
You know what, Pat? I think that a lot of us really don't trust the government. So because we're so distrustful, we want to make sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, because we know that they're going to do everything they can to keep us off the ballot. So it's that level of distrust that we have that, keeps us paying attention to detail like we need to.
Well, and indeed, and it's because of the current environment where our government simply isn't capable of being honest with us at any level. It's at this point in time, it's almost like they're phobic about it. They even at times when it would help their statist causes, even at times when it would be, help engage in at least a conversation with people, particularly about all the issues circling around the pandemic. They're incapable of simply looking at us in the eyes philosophically and just saying the truth. And no matter how many times, folks, as you know, I work in an environment, I'll just say this, where I get to interface routinely with people in high office on a one-to-one basis. And I'm talking about the United States Senate, governors, congressmen, state representatives. I get to have a conversation with them that's unlike most people. And even then, when I have that private conversation that says, you know what, if you were to say this or open this up to people's analysis, you might actually get buy-in from people on a lot of the things that you're trying to advance. But they're incapable of it. They just, it's almost like there's got to be the grift, doesn't there? I mean, Christopher, you've dealt firsthand with states like New York, who, the analogy I always use is Lucy and the football. Now you got to be of a certain age, but when Lucy pulls the football around from Charlie Brown for the 55th time, why do you think? I mean, for the love of God, what's it going to take for that? There's an old saying here in Rhode Island, "Come Coco," which is a nice way of saying just have an honest conversation. Are they capable of it at this point, or is it just too late?
I think that so just using ballot access as kind of a microcosm to show the inherent corruption that exists. You have the Republicans and the Democrats who create these laws for no other reason but to stifle competition, to make sure that they don't have to deal with a real alternative. And then you have situations where they ignore their own laws and then nothing happens. There was a situation, I wish I could remember the state, but in 2016, there was one state where the Republicans and the Democrats, neither gubernatorial candidate from the two old parties submitted their paperwork on time. But of course, it was decided, oh, well, we can't possibly just have the independent candidate and libertarian candidates on the ballot. We have to, well, when the Republicans and Democrats, okay, it's fine. You don't really have to follow the law. There's a news story out just recently here. Terry McAuliffe, who is a former governor and now the would-be governor of Virginia, is a longtime Democratic partisan, was chair of the DNC, basically a money guy from the Clinton era and beyond. So I know it's not a libertarian, but back in 2000, the 2000 election and also 2004, it was 2004 specifically. There were threats made to the Ralph Nader campaign, basically saying, he literally, I happened to work with many years ago an individual who was Ralph Nader's campaign manager, and he literally on the phone call, stay out of these 16 states, to stay out of these states or I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was quite literally a threat, right? And worked to sue the Green Party and Nader's independent campaign just to make sure that they weren't on the ballot. And I think there's one, actually, interestingly enough, in Pennsylvania, there's one law where one lawsuit that was filed at his behest anyway, that basically, in the end, the Green Party was ordered to cover all of the legal bills for the DNC, and of course that not possible to make up the financing gap there. But anyway, but yeah. So again, you've got this situation where this person, this individual, this I'll just call it what it is, this partisan hack has decided that, or who has threatened somebody to make sure they're not on the ballot, and has engaged in all sorts of litigation, all sorts of underhanded techniques to make sure that there was not a real challenge on the ballot over the years. And what does he do? He messes up his paperwork running for governor and does not sign a form that that is required by state law for him to be on the ballot for governor in Virginia. And his argument is, well, it's not really actually a legal requirement. Now I guarantee you, if one of our libertarian candidates forgot to sign a candidacy form, do you think that they would let them on the ballot? I would bet the house it will never happen.
Right.
But again, they create these laws to stifle real competition, to keep the Libertarian Party, to keep any kind of independent voice off the ballot. And then when they ignore their own laws, oh well.
You don't have to be doing ballot access long at all to run into situations where, you wouldn't believe how bad it was unless you saw it with your own eyes.
Yeah.
In 2020, we were talking about that earlier, how Pennsylvania sued the state because we were basically under social distancing orders. There were no large gatherings. We weren't allowed to approach people to petition. But at the same time, we were expected to get 5,000 valid signatures, which ultimately means about 10,000 signatures. I was on the stand in federal court myself talking about petitioning, and the Democrats' counsel famously told me that COVID-19 is only a threat to public health, in my opinion. I mean, this was the Democrats. They completely flipped their script. But I mean, that was just this one time. I mean, they tried to sue me off the ballot when I was uncontested just because they couldn't stand having a libertarian auditor, even though nobody else wanted the job. We literally had a sitting congressman send blonde women to lure off our petitioners, and it worked. I mean, that was in 2018. I mean, they'll drag our candidates. We won't even get our day in court. They'll do things like compel us to participate, and our candidate will have to show up for a week before our court date and go through signatures and help the Republicans prove the case against us. Like, what libertarian candidate has, a week off work and can afford counsel? I mean, we don't have $20,000 to put into a ballot access suit. So, at that point, very often we have to cede the ballot, and they know that. I mean, you don't have to do this very long to start running across these stories where they just do things that are amazing and go to great lengths to keep us off the ballot. It's unreal.
And if I could just kind of bring us to a conclusion tonight, there's a talking point that I'd love both of your reflections on, and I'd ask libertarians to try and use. And it kind of goes like this. Right now, across this country, depending on the state, depending on the venue, to your points, Democrats and Republicans are arguing about voter access and voter access rights and voting rights in general. Much of it based on racial terms, much of it based on gerrymandering. And so you've got, in particular, Democratic candidates, Democratic officials, the DNC, virtue signaling about how they're the party that wants to get people the right to vote. And here's what I'd like folks to bring to the table. At the very same time, in the state of New York, for example, those very same people are doing everything they can to get grassroots candidacies of a variety of political parties, not just the Libertarian, but the Greens and the Working Family and on and on and on. They're doing everything that they can do to keep them off the ballot. So my question, rhetorical nature, and I'd love your reflection on this before we sign off. And of course, we have to engage in shameless self-promotion. But if in fact you are given the right to vote, and I believe that's what I call a post-constitutional right. That is a birthright. That is a natural right. If in fact you do have that, yet at the same time, that same government works aggressively against the choices you might have to vote for, is that not in and of itself voter suppression of the likes that we haven't seen since the days of Leonid Brezhnev, the USSR, Soviet workers' paradise, and of course, the Communist Party of the nation state of Russia, where everybody can vote, but you only get one choice. And I think we can all effectively argue as libertarians, don't we really only have one choice right now?
We just paid for this war that lasted 20 years.
Oh,
none of us wanted to pay for this war. We're not being represented. I mean, we are not being represented in government. And how much of the national debt does each libertarian owe for something that we find, absolutely reprehensible?
Christopher, your thought?
You can, pick your cliche. It's two sides of the same coin. Right wing, left wing, both the same bird. The point is that when you get down to who is funding these two parties, who is working with these two parties to enact legislation that has absolutely it has no reflection of how people actually feel. There was a study done about the likelihood of a legislation to pass Congress based on public opinion, and it was literally statistically there is absolutely no difference in a piece of legislation that has almost universal public support and a piece of legislation that has almost no public support. They had exactly the same likelihood of passing, and the reason is because these two parties are nothing more than a corrupt cabal. Yes, okay, they argue on television, but when you get down to it, they are funded by the same people. They are enacting the same type of freedom blocking legislation and regulation. And the only way to change the paradigm of politics in the United States is to make sure that we have real, honest competition at the ballot box, that we have real, honest ballot access laws that allow all types of candidates, independents, multiple parties. It's literally the only way we can change what's going on in this country is by ensuring that we have the right and the ability to vote for candidates outside of this two-party ridiculous system that has been imposed upon us. And again, these ballot access laws exist for one reason: to eliminate competition. It's interesting you mentioned the Communist Party, because that is actually where ballot access laws began, was in Georgia, to keep the Communist Party off the ballot. I'm not going to vote for the Communist Party, but you know what? If a Communist Party member wants to be on the ballot, okay, well, you know what? Sure. And watch how badly they lose. The point is, if we have true freedom in our elections, then there's just, there is no way that we should be limited by law to just two choices, or by de facto limited to just two choices, especially when those two choices are all basically the same corrupt entity that has led us on the path that we find ourselves right now. Just like Jen was talking about, 20 years of funding a war that has cost thousands of lives, and we basically have funded military equipment for what was once our enemy now. This is just a perfect example of why it is we do what we do with the nitty-gritty of ballot access. Well, the point is, we've got to elect individuals outside of the two-party system to affect real change, and that's why we do what we do. So,
great way to close it off. Jen, why don't you engage, like what we say is here as shameless self-promotion. Talk about, you've got an event coming up that's being organized by congressional candidate Liz Terwilliger, but also just give a sense of how folks can learn about the Molten Maneuver and support it in Pennsylvania and also support it elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, I've got a couple of things that I want to get out of the way here. First of all, I want to, kind of give a nod to Christopher here and, the National Ballot Access Committee that I also serve on. Please donate LP.org ballot access. There are states that have such high signature requirements that the only way that we can do this is with paid petitioners. It's really, really important that we have the funding to get out there and set the stage now so that we can have ballot access in the next presidential. It's vital in some of these places. We're going to have a meeting this week to talk about it, and the funding is incredibly important. So please do contribute at the national level. The money's put to very good use, and that's how we end up with 50 state ballot access. Yes, Liz Terwilliger is one of my favorite candidates in the state. She is running for Congress next year, but she is having a Perspectives on Liberty forum with a bunch of great speakers in Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania in mid-September. So please check that out. As far as the Molten Maneuver, I'm looking forward to giving results in November of, who won write-in and who won their election. But I want to give a nod right now to our contested candidates. I actually posted a list on my chair, Jen Moore, LPPA chairwoman, on Facebook. I posted a list of those candidates. They could really use, a donation or just sharing their content, because they're out there running the hard contested races. We've got people who are running all the way from, borough council all the way up to countywide races who could really use your help. And there's a whole list of them on my Facebook page.
Excellent. And Christopher, give us a shout out for how folks can support ballot access.
So go to lp.com/ballot access. As Jen said, we have, we're we're certainly starting at a decent level, but we have so many states where we have to have the dollars to be able to put the boots on the ground. And your donation to the LP's Ballot Access Fund goes directly to a ballot access. And you know, it all starts with being on the ballot. You can't get elected if you're not on the ballot. And I'll tell you, the monumental effort that our volunteers and that our state parties, in combination with the national party, that takes place almost sometimes every year, definitely every 2 years, absolutely every 4 years, just to get on the ballot. It is a huge undertaking, and we need the funding to be able to successfully not only get the petitioning done, but also to be able to successfully challenge these laws through litigation, through lobbying, trying to change the laws. I mean, there's so much work that has to be done on the side of ballot access, and if you're able to volunteer, especially for your state party, then absolutely reach out to them too. But the bottom line is, it takes dollars to get boots on the ground. So if you're able, please donate to the Ballot Access Fund at lp.org ballot access. And just wanted to say thank you again for having me on here tonight, and looking forward to speaking with you on the Ballot Access Committee meeting here later this week, and we're going to see we're going to start troubleshooting some of the issues and planning out how we're going to attack such things as the New York situation, for example, you know, again, in order to make these plans happen, put them in action, and to be successful once again, we need your help. So, in case you didn't hear me, and in case you can't read, at the bottom of the screen, it's lp.org/ballot access. Thanks again.
Wonderful stuff, folks. A couple of housekeeping notes. This Friday night, we're going to be attempting to do a broadcast, and whenever we do it from the road, as folks in Pennsylvania can tell you, there's always uncertain results. But I've done this show from park benches in Boston, from hilltops in Pittsburgh. We're taking the show to Louisville, Kentucky, the site of this weekend's Libertarian National Committee quarterly meeting. And we're going to try and corral ahead of time, some candidates and some folks to talk to. So that, of course, will be at 9 o'clock or so. Bear with us. 9 o'clock Eastern time on LPTV Friday evening. Next Monday, we're going to be right back at you with the affiliate show. Guest to be determined. We're going to be reaching in the next few weeks. I just spoke to a gentleman from Pennsylvania today who is a county chair. We're going to start reaching into some of the, if you will, the county and local affiliates to really get a sense of what it's like to be boots on the ground across America, running these hyper-local campaigns, ginning up enthusiasm, volunteers in every burg, every city, every suburb, every exurb imaginable. So we're going to take it a little bit on the road like that. Folks, first of all, again, a big thank you to tonight's guest, Jen Moore. She is the chairperson of the Libertarian Party of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Of course, Christopher Thrasher, who is the head honcho now, if you will, of the Ballot Access Committee, and has been an integral part of our ballot access successes against all odds, against some Herculean challenges across this nation. Folks, you've been listening to the Libertarian Affiliate Spotlight on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party Affiliate Support Committee. As always, Valerie Sarwark serving as chair, and of course, the Libertarian National Committee, Whitney Bilyeu as chair. A big thanks to John Gabso, again, who's the one who answers the questions and posts the questions and puts up the maps and the results and makes this show as lively as we can make it. He comes here twice a week, Monday nights and Friday nights, and donates his time. It is, I don't know if I thank him enough for that. And I want to make sure that everybody in Libertarian Nation knows that this is a significant effort on his behalf after, like so many of you, spending a full and rewarding day at your place of employment. My name is Pat Ford. I'm your host. It is an honor to meet folks virtually and hopefully at some point in real time from across the Libertarian Nation. This is more fun than you can ever imagine. And I thank the Libertarian Party for allowing me the opportunity to do this and for the creation of LPTV. Folks, have a wonderful week in liberty. You know, this is Labor Day weekend's coming up. There are elections across this country that are going to take place in 2021, despite the fact that it's an odd year. Places like New Jersey and Pennsylvania, everywhere around this country, there are elections, special elections. Regardless of how you feel about current events, regardless of how you feel about the sea changes that are taking place in the Libertarian Party at the national level, regardless of that, there are wonderful down ballot candidates who deserve your support. Please take that frustration, take that excess energy, and dive right in. In some of these cases, we've got 90 days to make history, and I'm convinced we can. I look forward to working with all of you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll see you Friday night.